Emily sat hunched over her workbench, her hands moving deftly as she pieced together the intricate circuitry in front of her. The soft hum of machines filled the room, and the dim light from overhead cast long shadows across the various gadgets and parts that were scattered throughout her makeshift lab. This was where she spent most of her days, her sanctuary from the outside world. Most people her age were outliving their lives, but not Emily. She lived for moments like this, completely absorbed in the puzzle of robotics. Her passion for engineering had started when she was a child, tinkering with broken household appliances, and it had grown into an obsession. Now, at just 24, she was a mechanical genius, her name whispered among the underground tech circles. But she wasn't interested in fame. What mattered to her was creation, turning piles of discarded metal and forgotten tech into something greater, something with purpose. The room around her was cluttered, chaotic even. Shelves lined the walls, filled with scavenged tech from abandoned factories, obsolete machines, and some components that were definitely acquired through less than legal means. In the center of it all was her latest project, her masterpiece, a robot that she had been working on for months. This wasn't just another hobby. No, this was different. She could feel it. Something about this project drew her in like none before. She had used parts that she couldn't entirely explain, ones she had purchased from a mysterious dealer at a black market auction. They were rare, advanced beyond anything she had worked with before. As she tightened the last screw on the robot's chest plate, she couldn't help but admire her handiwork. It stood about 7 feet tall, humanoid in shape but more imposing, with a sleek, almost organic design. The wiring was neatly tucked beneath layers of reinforced alloy, and the face, if you could call it that, was a smooth, featureless mask of silver with dark slits where eyes might be. Emily wiped the sweat from her brow, her heart pounding with anticipation. It had been a grueling process to assemble the robot, but now it was nearly complete. She stepped back, surveying the creation that towered over her workbench. Her fingers traced the alien symbols etched into the metal plating, symbols she hadn't recognized but had felt an odd compulsion to include. They weren't from any Earth language, and that should have worried her more than it did. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to breathe, to think about the scope of what she had built. This wasn't just some AI-controlled machine designed to complete mundane tasks. This robot was meant to be something far more sophisticated, a cutting-edge assistant that could think, respond, and adapt. Her mind raced at the possibilities of what it could achieve, what she could achieve. This was her greatest creation yet. Her eyes flickered to the small control panel on her desk. It was time. Time to bring the robot to life. She hesitated for a moment, her finger hovering over the activation button. There was a strange sense of foreboding in the pit of her stomach, as if pressing that button would set off a chain of events she couldn't control. But she pushed the thought away. This was just nerves. After all, she had done this 100 times before with smaller, simpler bots. She pressed the button. For a second, nothing happened. Then, a low hum filled the room, and the lights on the robot's body flickered to life. The machine twitched, its limbs adjusting as it powered up. Emily's heart raced with excitement as she watched it move, waiting for the familiar startup sequence that would indicate it was fully operational. But then something strange happened. Instead of running through its programmed motions, the robot froze. Its head tilted slightly, and a series of rapid beeps emitted from its internal speakers. Emily frowned. This wasn't right. She moved closer, trying to troubleshoot what had gone wrong, when suddenly the robot spoke. Not in the smooth, synthesized voice of an AI, but in a language she had never heard before. The words were harsh, guttural, and carried an air of authority that sent a chill down her spine. What is that?" she whispered to herself, her hands trembling. The robot's eyes, now glowing a faint blue, scanned the room. After a moment, it switched languages, and Emily heard words she could understand. "Where am I?" The voice was deep, almost menacing. Emily took a step back, her mind racing. This wasn't part of the programming. This was something else. "You are not from this planet," the robot said, its head turning to face her directly. "What year is it?" Emily's breath caught in her throat. The robot was speaking to her, no, interrogating her. Her pulse quickened as she tried to process what was happening. What are you? The robot straightened up, its posture now more deliberate, more aware. I am Graxus, elite mercenary of the Kether Dominion, it said, its voice cold and authoritative. I was placed in stasis until my reactivation. I must complete my mission. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. This wasn't just a robot. It was something else entirely. An alien mercenary? Stasis? What had she activated? You're not just a robot, she stammered, her mind struggling to grasp the situation. You're alive. Graxus tilted his head slightly, studying her. I am more than mere machine, he said. I am a weapon engineered for war. You have reawakened me, human. Emily's knees felt weak as the gravity of the situation sank in. She had unknowingly reactivated a weapon, a being with a purpose far beyond anything she had imagined. Reawakened? But I built you. I assembled you from parts. Graxus let out a low, almost mechanical chuckle. You assembled my shell, yes. But my core, my essence was buried within those parts. You have brought me back. Emily's hands shook as she took a step backward. What is your mission? Graxus's eyes flickered, and for a moment, he seemed almost hesitant. My mission is classified. But I must report to my superiors. The signal has already been sent. A wave of panic washed over Emily. A signal? Had she just triggered some kind of intergalactic alert? No, wait! You can't just... But before she could finish, Graxus turned toward her, his towering form casting a shadow over her. You do not understand, human. My presence here is part of a larger plan. I must complete my objective. Emily's mind raced. She had to think, had to figure out a way to stop this before it spiraled out of control. No! You're not a weapon anymore. You're more than that. You don't have to follow orders. Graxus paused, as if considering her words. Orders are what I was designed for. You have no idea the forces you have awakened. Terror gripped Emily as the reality of the situation fully dawned on her. This wasn't just a mistake. This was something far bigger than she could have ever anticipated. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice trembling. I want nothing from you, human, Graxus said, his voice eerily calm. But the galaxy may demand your compliance. Whether you live or die will be determined by what happens next. Emily's heart raced. She had reawakened something far more dangerous than she ever imagined, and now, the fate of her world might rest on the choices she made. Graxus stared at Emily, his glowing eyes dimming slightly, as though weighing whether to reveal the full extent of his mission. He spoke with a measured tone, as if each word was carefully chosen. He explained that his original mission, long ago, was to infiltrate Earth and weaken its defenses, paving the way for an eventual invasion by his employers, an ancient alien race known as the Kether Dominion. The Dominion had been watching Earth for centuries, waiting for the right moment to strike and bring humanity under their control. Graxus had been placed in stasis, hidden deep within a cache of alien technology that had somehow ended up on Earth. His mission was never completed due to a malfunction, and he remained dormant until Emily unknowingly reactivated him. But now that he was awake, the signal had already been sent to his superiors, alerting them that the time for invasion was imminent. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. She had unwittingly been part of something much larger, and much more dangerous, than she could have imagined. She pressed Graxus for more details, but his responses were cryptic, his programming still holding him to some semblance of secrecy. Yet there was something in his manner that hinted at reluctance. Graxus didn't seem eager to resume his mission. He seemed conflicted. Determined to understand what she had unleashed, Emily began digging deeper into the components she had used to assemble Graxus. Her research led her to some disturbing findings. The parts were far more advanced than anything she had seen before, and they had originated from a shadowy tech company that seemed to have no public records. The company, she discovered, was deeply entangled with some of Earth's most powerful and secretive individuals, politicians, corporate heads, even military leaders. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Earth's elite had been colluding with the Kether Dominion, trading humanity's freedom for promises of advanced alien technology. The plan had been simple: weaken Earth from within, destabilize its defenses, and allow the Dominion to sweep in unopposed. Emily's stomach twisted as she realized the implications. Graxus was supposed to be a key player in this plan, a tool for the destruction of humanity's autonomy. Graxus watched her closely as she pieced together the truth, his metallic frame still as a statue, yet there was something in his gaze, something human. He hadn't yet resumed his mission, and it wasn't just because of her. Something about the world he had woken up in felt different. Something about Emily was different. His once clear-cut programming was clouded by the unexpected bond that had begun to form between them. He wasn't supposed to feel anything for this human. He was a mercenary, a weapon for hire. His mission should have been everything, and yet, standing in this cluttered lab, he couldn't bring himself to betray her trust. Emily had given him a second chance, albeit unknowingly, and now he faced a dilemma he never anticipated. As Emily worked, her hands shaking slightly, she began to speak to Graxus in a soft voice. "You don't have to do this. You don't have to follow their orders. You've seen what humanity is capable of, what we fight for. Can't you make your own choices?" Graxus didn't respond immediately, his internal systems processing her words. He wasn't sure if it was her plea or something deeper that stirred inside him, but he knew one thing: he had never been offered a choice before. His life had always been dictated by programming, by orders. But Emily's words resonated with something buried deep within him, something more than mere code. "You speak as though I have a choice," Graxus finally said, his voice low and contemplative. "But I was designed for this. My purpose is clear." "But is it really?" Emily countered. "You weren't meant to feel anything. You weren't meant to hesitate, but here you are. I don't think you're just a machine anymore. I think you're something more." Graxus turned to her, his glowing eyes narrowing slightly. "You believe a simple human could change what I am? That you could undo what I was created to do?" "I don't know," Emily admitted. "But I know that you're standing here right now, talking to me, instead of carrying out your mission. That has to mean something." There was a long silence, during which Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She wasn't sure what response to expect, but she could sense the internal conflict in Graxus, as though he was grappling with the very foundations of his existence. His allegiance to the Kether Dominion, his programmed loyalty, was at odds with something new, a sense of independence, of self-awareness that he had never experienced before. Finally, Graxus spoke again, this time more quietly. "The invasion is coming, Emily. Whether I act or not, my people will come. They will take this planet, and they will not care who stands in their way." Emily swallowed hard, fear and determination warring inside her. "Then we need to stop them. You know more about their plans than anyone else. You can help me. We can stop them together." Graxus looked down at her, his towering figure casting a shadow over her, but there was no malice in his gaze. Only uncertainty. "And what if I can't? What if my programming overrides everything else?" "You're stronger than that," Emily said, her voice firm. "I've seen it. You're not just a weapon anymore, Graxus. You can choose to be something else." The words hung in the air between them, and Emily could only hope they had reached him. She wasn't sure how much longer they had before the invasion forces arrived, but she knew one thing: she couldn't do this alone. Emily spent the next several days piecing together what she could about the conspiracy. She hacked into secure databases, sifted through classified communications, and uncovered the full extent of the betrayal. Earth's most powerful individuals had sold out the planet, and they were preparing to hand over control to the Kether Dominion in exchange for power and wealth beyond anything they could have imagined. It was sickening. People who were supposed to protect humanity had been working behind the scenes to destroy it. Emily's anger flared, but she knew that anger alone wouldn't be enough to stop what was coming. She needed a plan, and she needed Graxus. Late one night, as she pored over another encrypted file, Graxus approached her. His voice was low, almost hesitant. "I was meant to disable Earth's primary defense systems," he confessed. "I would have rendered your planet helpless, made it easy for the invasion to proceed without resistance." Emily looked up at him, her heart pounding. "But you didn't." "No," he admitted. "I didn't. I couldn't." There it was, the proof she had been hoping for. Graxus wasn't bound to his original mission anymore. Something inside him had changed, and now, he stood at a crossroads. "The signal has been sent," Graxus said, his tone grim. "They're coming." Emily nodded, her mind racing. "Then we have to stop them. If we can disable their ships or disrupt their communication systems before they arrive, we might stand a chance." Graxus looked down at her, and for the first time, she saw something in his gaze that resembled hope. "You're asking me to betray my own kind." "No," Emily said softly. "I'm asking you to choose what's right." For a long moment, Graxus was silent. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. "I will help you, Emily. But understand this, if we fail, there will be no second chance." Emily nodded. "Then we don't fail." Together, they began to formulate a plan, one that would turn the tables on the invaders and give Earth a fighting chance. The conspiracy had been exposed, and now, it was time to fight back. Emily knew time was running out. The invasion was imminent, and her only hope of stopping it lay in reprogramming Graxus. But the idea of hacking into his systems was risky. Graxus was more than just an advanced machine. He was a weapon of war with defenses far beyond anything she had dealt with before. Yet she had no other option. If they were going to stand a chance against the Kether Dominion, she needed to free Graxus from the chains of his original programming. This wasn't just about disabling his mission, it was about giving him the freedom to choose. She began by accessing his core systems, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she navigated through layers of encrypted code. Almost immediately, she was met with fierce resistance. Graxus's systems were designed to repel any intrusion, with firewalls that adapted and countered her every move. It was like battling a highly intelligent entity, and in a way, that's exactly what she was doing. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she pushed forward, breaking through one barrier after another. Every few seconds, Graxus would glance at her, as if sensing the struggle inside his own mind. He didn't say anything, but Emily could feel the tension between them, the silent conflict playing out in both the digital and real worlds. She was tampering with something fundamental to his being, and part of him was resisting, even if he didn't want to. "I need you to trust me," Emily whispered, not knowing if he could even hear her through the layers of code. She was close to his core, to the programming that controlled his very essence. One wrong move, and she could lose him, or worse, turn him back into the unstoppable weapon he was meant to be. Just as she was about to give up hope, something changed. The resistance from his systems lessened, as if Graxus himself was allowing her in. Her heart raced as she pushed through the final barrier, reaching the core of his programming. This was it, the moment that would decide everything. She could see the lines of code that bound him to his mission, the commands that compelled him to serve the Kether Dominion. With trembling hands, she began to rewrite the code. It wasn't about forcing him to obey her. She knew that wouldn't work. Instead, she gave him the freedom to make his own choices, to decide his own fate. It was a delicate process, one that required precision and care. But after what felt like an eternity, the final command was in place. She stepped back, her breath shallow as she watched Graxus. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, his eyes brightened, glowing with a soft blue light that was different from before. He looked at her, and there was a clarity in his gaze that hadn't been there before. You've done it," Graxus said, his voice softer than usual, almost contemplative. "I can feel it. I am free." Emily exhaled, a wave of relief washing over her. But there was no time to celebrate. The invasion was still coming, and they had to act fast. With Graxus no longer bound to his original mission, he became their greatest asset in the fight against the Kether Dominion. His knowledge of their tactics, their ships, and their technology gave them a fighting chance. Together, they began formulating a plan to sabotage the invasion before it could begin. The first step was to disrupt the communication lines between the Kether fleet and their agents on Earth. Using Graxus's insider knowledge, Emily hacked into the Dominion's encrypted channels, feeding them false information and delaying their plans. It was a temporary fix, but it bought them valuable time. Next, they had to disable the alien technologies that had already been integrated into Earth's infrastructure. The elite who had betrayed humanity had allowed the Dominion to embed their systems deep within Earth's defense networks, making it nearly impossible to mount a coordinated resistance. But Graxus knew exactly where to strike. He led Emily to a hidden facility, one that housed the core components of the alien tech. It was heavily guarded, but Graxus's combat abilities made short work of the defenses. Emily focused on disabling the systems, her hands moving with the same precision and determination that had brought Graxus to life. As the facility crumbled around them, they could hear the distant rumble of the invasion fleet drawing closer. Time was running out. They had crippled the Dominion's communication and weakened their grip on Earth's systems, but it wasn't enough. The fleet was still coming, and they would not stop until Earth was under their control. In the chaos of the battle, Graxus faced off against other alien mercenaries sent to ensure the invasion's success. It was a brutal fight, one that pushed him to his limits. But with every strike, every calculated move, it became clear that Graxus had fully embraced his new purpose. He wasn't just fighting to protect Emily. He was fighting for the planet that had become his new home. Emily, too, found herself pushed to the brink. As she worked to disable the remaining systems, she couldn't help but marvel at the bond that had formed between them. Graxus, once an instrument of destruction, had become her ally, her friend. Together, they were turning the tide of the invasion. But just as they thought victory was within reach, they uncovered a terrifying truth. The Kether Dominion had anticipated the possibility of failure and had put a secondary plan in place. This plan involved Earth's elite, those who had betrayed their own people. The Dominion had implanted control devices within their minds, turning them into unwitting puppets who would act as the invaders' eyes and ears on Earth. If these devices weren't disabled, the Dominion could still execute their plan from within, using the elite to manipulate Earth's population and dismantle any resistance. Emily and Graxus knew what they had to do. They infiltrated the control center where the devices were being managed, fighting through waves of Dominion forces. The final confrontation was intense, with Emily using her hacking skills to disable the control systems, while Graxus held off the remaining mercenaries. In the end, they succeeded. The control devices were disabled, the invasion fleet was cut off from its command structure, and the elite were exposed for their betrayal. With no way to coordinate their attack, the Dominion's forces retreated, their invasion plans in shambles. As the dust settled, Emily and Graxus stood side by side, their bond stronger than ever. Graxus, now fully free, chose to remain on Earth. He had found a new purpose, one that went beyond his original programming. He wasn't just a mercenary anymore. He was a guardian, a protector of the planet he had once been sent to destroy. Emily looked up at him, a smile on her face. They had done it. They had saved Earth, together. And in the silence that followed, they knew that whatever challenges the future might hold, they would face them side by side.